Hello, Joy Horner here from Birth Joy. I wanted to talk today a little bit about Freebirth. I did a Facebook Live a couple of days ago on it and somehow lost the recording, so I thought I'd do another one. As usual, it's totally unscripted and it will be whatever comes into my mind. So I hope it's good. So, Freebirth. So in the United Kingdom, Freebirth is totally legal. It's also totally legal to have your partner with you during a free birth, and to have your doula if you have a doula with you. I probably ought to explain what free birth is for people that don't know. Again, some people call it unassisted birth, some people call it family birth. I usually call it free birth, it just rolls off the tongue better for me. So free birth is when you do not call a midwife or a doctor, you don't go to hospital, you give birth unassisted, with just people that love you and support you around you, no medically trained personnel. And as I said, that's totally legal in the UK, but it can be viewed with great suspicion, because it can be seen as not seeking medical care for your baby in labour and birth. Now, it's a really difficult one. People choose free birth for lots and lots of different reasons. So the biggest two reasons that people tell me about is that either they feel totally empowered and they do not see the need for a midwife or a doctor because they're so empowered and so knowledgeable about birth. They've done all their homework and they know what they're doing, and they've thought about all the consequences of different outcomes to birth, and it's a really empowered choice. The group of people that I tend to see that come to me are people who've been badly traumatised in the past. So it may be that they've had really uncaring midwives, uncaring doctors, birth trauma, can't go near a hospital, certainly don't want to call health professionals because it may trigger previous trauma. And I see this as an absolute travesty, that people that need the most help are often the people that really don't get the help. And there's a third group, which are people who are left with no other option, particularly during the pandemic. And I noticed this at the beginning of last year when we were just going into lockdown and NHS services were withdrawing their care for home births. So people were suddenly told there wouldn't be a midwife that could attend them at home, and people suddenly had to decide if they'd give birth at home without a midwife or if they'd have to change their plans and go to hospital. And for a certain number of people, changing their plans and going to hospital just wasn't an option, because of trauma, because of childcare, because of fear of catching something if you go to hospital. Loads and loads of reasons why people choose home birth. And a great saying that my now dear departed Mary Cronk used to say is that people shouldn't have to give birth at home to give birth in peace. But this is the reality. This is why a lot of people do choose to give birth at home. And when they're told a midwife won't attend, they have to choose whether to go into hospital, and face a lot of things they didn't want to do, or stay at home without a midwife. And that's not an empowered choice. I mean, it's a choice, but they've been given no choice. It's a choice it's the lesser of two evils, isn't it? They didn't want either of those choices. So people may decide to give birth without a midwife. Now, as a former midwife of 20 years, I practiced for 21 years actually, I know that birth can sometimes be safer with a trained and knowledgeable midwife in attendance. And that doesn't matter if you're at home, in a birth centre, in hospital. Birth can be safer, but you're also sometimes at risk of what's called iatrogenic harm, which means harm that's caused by the health practitioner. There wasn't a problem and you went into labour and interventions were done which led to a problem. That's iatrogenic harm. So a lot of people don't want to face that, and would rather give birth without a midwife. Again, it's the lesser of two evils, isn't it? You can face the risk of potential harm in hospital, or you can face the risk of an unexpected outcome at home that you can't deal with. So really difficult. And for this reason, and to help people and potentially to save lives, I wrote a few courses last year, including one that's called Birth Without a Midwife, because I want people to know the very basic first aid measures that they can do whilst waiting for an ambulance. So if they're suddenly faced with a baby that's slow to breathe, or a baby's head's born and the shoulders are taking a bit of time coming out, or they have an unexpected breech birth, or higher than average blood loss, it's good to know what to do if you're stuck at home without a medical professional, whilst you're waiting for an ambulance to arrive. But that isn't why I'm here today. It's to talk about free birth on the whole. Now, I only learned recently that there's also something called a wild pregnancy. And although I'd heard of people not accessing midwifery or obstetric care in their pregnancies, I hadn't heard the term wild pregnancy. So this was a new one to me. And I have to thank the many people that do contact me and have consultations with me for educating me, really. So it's again not unusual for people not to engage with a midwife or doctor in their pregnancy, and this can be an empowered choice for some people, and other people may be forced into that situation again because they've had trauma and they just don't want to be traumatized again. They can't face being traumatized again, which may lead to them not accessing midwifery care. Again, there's pros and cons, there's risks on both sides. I'd always encourage people to engage with a midwife for their midwifery care, but that doesn't mean that you have to accept everything that's offered. So you don't have to accept all the blood tests, you don't have to accept scans, you don't have to accept the number of appointments they want to give you, you don't even have to accept going into hospital or a clinic for appointments. If that doesn't serve you, then just don't. You don't have to. So as long as you realise that you're the consumer, you're the customer, and you pay your taxes, you live in this country, you can decide what care you need and find acceptable and which you don't. So I would encourage everyone to book with an NHS midwife. I think the blood tests that are done can pick up abnormalities that we can do something about. We can pick up low iron, we can pick up different antibodies that weren't there in your last pregnancy, we can pick up infections, all sorts of things. Scans, again, I won't go into the scans in depth, but basically there's a scan around 12 weeks, which is a dating scan, and it also measures the fold at the back of the baby's neck. If you can imagine, I might have a teaching doll handy. Then again, I might not. No. It's in my other office. So the fold at the back of the neck where the head goes in, they can measure that and give you a risk factor for Down syndrome, Edwards syndrome, Patau syndrome. So that can be useful for some people. It's a screening test. It's not a diagnostic test. It doesn't tell you if the baby's got a problem or not. It just tells you if you're high risk of a problem or low risk. And if you're high risk, it offered further tests, blood tests and things. It also offered a scan at 20 weeks of pregnancy in the UK, and that's sometimes called the anomaly scan, and that can check basically all the major structures of the baby's body, so the brain, the heart, the limbs, even the face. We can see if there's like a hair lip or a cleft palate, on this scan. It's really useful. We detect about 50% of heart problems before birth using these scans, and we can pick up other abnormalities that maybe need treatment straight away after birth, so it's well worth having. The downside is they can pick up things that aren't a problem. Kidneys that are a bit too large, sometimes an area on the brain which doesn't look quite right. And when the baby's born, we find that these things aren't actually a problem, and we may have actually just worried you throughout your whole pregnancy after having this scan. Another typical finding of that scan is a low-lying placenta. Now, a lot of placentas are low at 20 weeks, and as the uterus grows, the placenta grows up with it. Doesn't crawl up the side, it's not moving. It's stuck to the wall of the uterus, but as the uterus grows, it's going to be higher and further away from your cervix. So they're the useful things that engaging with a midwife can give you. Your midwife can also check, particularly useful from 24 weeks onwards, that your baby is growing by measuring, although that's quite inaccurate. Some people might like that. More importantly, your midwife can check your blood pressure and test your urine and see if there are any possible signs of preeclampsia. That's a very useful thing to be tested for in pregnancy. Okay, went off at a bit of a tangent there, telling you why it's useful to engage with a midwife. But not everyone does, and some people do have wild pregnancies, and that's their choice. But again, like a free birth, a wild pregnancy is likely to cause suspicion from health professionals. If you didn't seek help for yourself and your baby, you obviously weren't caring for your baby. Now, most people, the vast majority of people, are caring for their baby, and that's why they haven't engaged with midwives or health services. They've been eating well, they've been resting, they've been exercising, they've been relaxing, doing everything that's right for their baby. And these are sensible people, these are grown-ups, people who, if there was a problem, if they felt ill or if they were worried in any way, would engage, would seek help for themselves or their babies. And the same with free birth. If someone has planned a free birth and they get a feeling, they're just uneasy, they're not happy at home, or they feel the labour's stalled, or, baby's stuck, they listen to those feelings, they act on the intuition, and might then call a midwife or go to hospital, depending on what they found acceptable. So I think that's my little spiel about free birth, really. Do contact me if you need to talk anything through. My name is Joy Horner, and you can email me at joy@birthjoy.co.uk, or you can book a private consultation with me to talk through any aspect of your care and see how best to interface with the NHS, particularly if you've had previous trauma. There are sensitive ways that you can interface with the NHS, and you can get the care you need and the support you need. And I can help with that process. So thank you for listening. And if you want to look at my website, it's www.birthjoy.co.uk. Thank you. Bye.